The request came on hotel stationery, written in the shaking handwriting of a woman who knew she was dying. "Mr. Martin, my husband loved your voice. Could you sing That's Amore one last time? For both of us?" When Dean Martin read those words in his dressing room at the Desert Inn, he had no idea that honoring a widow's final wish would transform him from entertainer to angel of mercy and remind all of Vegas what it meant to be human in a city built on dreams and broken hearts. It was December 23rd, 1963, 2 nights before Christmas. Las Vegas sparkled with artificial snow and neon angels, a desert oasis where winter was just another costume in the grand performance of American excess. The Desert Inn glowed like a jewel against the dark Nevada mountains, its showroom packed with high rollers and holiday revelers who'd come to escape the season's sacred obligations in favor of secular salvation through cards, dice, and dreams. Dean stood in his dressing room, adjusting his bow tie in the mirror that had reflected 1,000 performances. The routine was always the same. Check the hair, straighten the jacket, practice that sleepy smile that made millions of women swoon and millions of men want to buy him a drink. Tonight's audience would be the usual mix: oil executives from Texas, mob lawyers from Chicago, politicians from Washington, and tourists from everywhere else, all united in their worship of the almighty dollar and the man who made losing it feel like winning. The letter sat on his dressing table like a small gravestone, the hotel's elegant cream stationery, incongruous with the desperate scrawl that covered it. Dean had received thousands of fan letters over the years, requests for autographs, marriage proposals, invitations to birthday parties and bar mitzvahs. But this one was different. This one smelled of finality. "Mr. Martin," it read, "my name is Rose Castellano. I am 74 years old and staying in room 12047. The doctors say I have perhaps a week left, maybe less. My husband Vincent died 6 months ago, and I've come to Las Vegas to spend my final days in the place where we honeymooned 47 years ago. Vincent loved your music more than anything except me. He said your voice reminded him of Sunday afternoons and family dinners and all the good things that make life worth living. If it wouldn't be too much trouble, could you sing That's Amore tonight? Not for the audience, but for Vincent and me? I know he's listening somewhere, and I'd like to hear his favorite song one more time before I join him. With gratitude and hope, Rose Castellano." Dean had read the letter 3 times, each reading hitting him harder than the last. In a city where everything was calculated for maximum profit and minimum genuine emotion, someone had written him a letter about love and death and the power of music to bridge the space between this world and whatever came next. Mickey Rudin, his manager, had laughed when Dean showed him the letter. "Come on, Dean. You get a dozen sob stories like this every week. Half of them are scams, and the other half are just lonely people looking for attention. You start responding to every sad sack who writes you a letter, you'll never get off stage." But Dean couldn't shake the image of an elderly woman sitting alone in room 12047, listening to the sounds of celebration drifting up from the casino floor while she waited to die. Something in those carefully formed words reminded him of his own mother, who'd passed the year before after a long illness that had stolen her voice but never her dignity. The show was scheduled to start at 9 o'clock. At 8:30, Dean made a decision that would become Vegas legend. He knocked on the door of room 12. When the door opened, Dean found himself looking at a tiny woman in a faded pink robe, her white hair pinned up in careful curls despite her illness. Her face was deeply lined, but her dark eyes still held the spark of someone who'd lived fully and loved deeply. Behind her, the room was neat and spare, with a single suitcase open on the bed and a framed photograph of a handsome young couple on the nightstand. Rose and Vincent on their wedding day, both of them radiant with the kind of joy that only comes once in a lifetime. "Mrs. Castellano?" Dean said gently. Rose's eyes widened with recognition, then filled with tears. "Mr. Martin? But your show, you have to perform." "The show can wait," Dean said. "May I come in?" Rose stepped aside, her hands fluttering nervously as she tried to straighten her appearance. "I'm not dressed for company. I didn't expect, I hoped, but I never thought." Dean entered the modest hotel room, noting the medications lined up on the dresser, the oxygen tank in the corner, the careful way Rose moved, as if each step required conscious effort. This wasn't a scam or a publicity stunt. This was a woman saying goodbye to life on her own terms. "Tell me about Vincent," Dean said, settling into the room's single chair. Rose's face transformed, the lines softening as she smiled. "He was the most wonderful man who ever lived. We met at a church dance in 19. He was so handsome in his Sunday suit, and when he asked me to dance, I thought I might faint right there on the spot." She moved slowly to the bed, sitting on its edge as she continued. "He worked construction for 45 years, building schools and hospitals and houses for other people's dreams. His hands were always rough from the work, but they were so gentle when he touched me. Every Sunday after Mass, he'd put your records on the phonograph and dance with me in our living room. That's Amore was our song." Dean felt something tighten in his chest. "How long were you married?" 47 years. 47 years of Sunday dances and Saturday picnics and Christmas mornings with our children." Rose's voice caught. "We never had much money, but we had each other. Vincent used to say that was the only wealth that mattered." "When did he pass?" "June 15th. Heart attack. Quick and peaceful, the doctor said. He was listening to your music when it happened. Everybody loves somebody. I found him in his chair with the biggest smile on his face, like he'd heard something beautiful just before he left." Dean was quiet for a moment, processing the image of a man dying with music in his ears and love in his heart. "Mrs. Castellano, why did you come to Vegas?" Rose smiled through her tears. "This is where we spent our honeymoon. Vincent had saved up for 6 months to bring me here in 1916, back when it was just a dusty train stop. We stayed in a little boarding house that probably isn't even there anymore, but it was the most romantic place in the world to us. We promised each other that someday we'd come back. And you never made it back together. Life got in the way. Children, work, responsibilities. There was always a reason to postpone the trip. Vincent kept saying, 'Next year, Rose. Next year we'll go back to Vegas and dance like we did on our honeymoon.' But next year never came." Dean stood up, walked to the window that overlooked the glittering casino floor. Below, thousands of people were gambling away their Christmas bonuses, chasing dreams that would likely end in disappointment. Up here, a woman who'd found real treasure, 47 years of genuine love, was preparing to let it go. "Mrs. Castellano," Dean said, turning back to face her, "would you like to dance?" Rose looked confused. "Here? Now? But Mr. Martin, your show—" "The show is right here," Dean said. "The most important audience I'll ever have." He began to sing, softly, without accompaniment. "In Napoli, where love is king, when boy meets girl, here's what they sing." Rose's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Slowly, carefully, she stood up from the bed. Dean crossed the room and offered his hand, and Rose took it with fingers that trembled not from fear but from joy. They danced in that small hotel room, a dying widow and a man at the height of his fame, while Dean sang the song that had soundtracked 47 years of Sunday afternoons. Rose closed her eyes and rested her head against Dean's chest, and for 3 minutes she wasn't a cancer patient or a recent widow. She was a young bride dancing with her husband in a dusty boarding house, drunk on love and possibility. When the song ended, Rose looked up at Dean with eyes shining. "He was here," she whispered. "Vincent was here. I felt him dancing with us." Dean kissed Rose's forehead gently. "He's been with you all along, Mrs. Castellano. Love like yours doesn't end just because someone stops breathing." Downstairs in the Desert Inn showroom, an audience of 800 waited for Dean Martin to appear. The orchestra had played 3 warm-up sets. The waiters had served countless drinks. The casino manager was pacing nervously, worried about the expensive crowd growing restless. But Dean wasn't thinking about ticket sales, or Vegas politics, or his reputation as the most professional entertainer in the business. He was thinking about Vincent Castellano, who'd worked construction for 45 years and died listening to music, and Rose Castellano, who'd traveled to Vegas to keep a 47-year-old promise. When Dean finally took the stage at 10:15, more than an hour late, he looked different. The usual cool detachment was gone, replaced by something warmer, more present. He walked to the microphone without his customary joke or smooth patter. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dean said, his voice carrying an unusual weight, "before we start tonight's show, I want to tell you about love. Real love, the kind that lasts 47 years and survives death itself. He told them about Rose and Vincent, about Sunday dances and Christmas mornings, about a man who died with music in his ears and a woman who'd come to Vegas to say goodbye properly. The audience, accustomed to Dean's light entertainment, found themselves listening to something deeper, a meditation on mortality and meaning in a city that usually avoided both topics. This next song, Dean said, is for Rose Castellano, who's listening from room 12047, and for her husband Vincent, who I believe is listening from somewhere even closer. It's for everyone who's ever been lucky enough to find someone worth dancing with for a lifetime. Dean sang That's Amore that night like he'd never sung it before, with a tenderness and intimacy that transformed the glittering showroom into something approaching sacred space. When he finished, the audience didn't applaud, they wept. Hardened gamblers and cynical entertainers found themselves thinking about their own loves, their own losses, their own mortality in a place designed to make people forget such things. After the show, Dean returned to room 1247. Rose was sleeping peacefully, the medications finally overcoming her pain. He left a note on her nightstand. Mrs. Castellano, thank you for reminding me why I sing. You and Vincent have given me the greatest gift an entertainer can receive, the knowledge that music matters. With love and respect, Dean Martin. Rose Castellano died 2 days later, on Christmas morning, with Dean's note clutched in her hand, and That's Amore playing softly on the radio. The hospital staff said she went peacefully, with a smile on her face. Dean paid for Rose's funeral and had her buried next to Vincent in their hometown cemetery in Ohio. He never spoke publicly about their meeting, but those close to him noticed a change. His performances became more personal, more emotionally connected. He started dedicating songs to audience members, looking for the Rose Castellanos in every crowd. The story of Dean's private concert for a dying widow spread through Vegas like wildfire, not through publicity departments or press releases, but through the whispered conversations of dealers and waitresses, musicians and managers who'd witnessed something unprecedented, genuine humanity in a city built on artificial dreams. Years later, when Dean was asked about the most important performance of his career, he never mentioned the packed stadiums or television specials or movie premieres. He talked about dancing with a 74-year-old woman in room 12047, singing for an audience of two, one living, one departed, and learning that the most profound entertainment happens when you stop performing and start connecting. Rose Castellano's last request had been simple: one more song for the road, one final dance before the music stopped forever. But in granting that request, Dean Martin discovered something that no amount of fame or fortune could buy: the knowledge that love is the only performance that really matters, and the only audience that counts is the one sitting right in front of you, waiting to be reminded that they're not alone in the dark. In a city where everything was measured by profit margins and audience size, a dying widow had taught the king of cool that the most important shows are played for audiences of one, in hotel rooms where death waits patiently while love takes its final bow.